Yeah. All right, recording in progress, it just said.
That's right. Very exciting. So
Yeah,
far, so good.
that's so cool.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
Hey, Jincy. Wow. So happy to see you today. So glad you're in San Diego.
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
Escondido.
Okay.
It's North County.
I wondered if that's actually where you were.
Yeah.
It's San Diego County, but it's not exactly.
Right. It's inland north.
Right. Very nice. So it's so glad to see you. And hello, class. Jincy Willett and I have gathered here today to address and some animals. We also have
Some animals.
yes. We are here to address questions for Jincy, and we're excited to do that. I wanted to let you know, class.
You know what? I'm going to go put those dogs. I'll be right back. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to let you guys know that many of you submitted 3 or more questions, and I'm only going to be reading 1 question per student to Jincy, okay, rather than your entire group. This is not to say that you wrote bad questions. You didn't. They're great questions, but you know, there are 18 of us, so and 1 of Jincy, truly only 1. So we shall begin. Jincy, I think I mentioned to you, we had read 3 of your stories were assigned, but a number of students read much more than that, which was great. And a number of students are huge fans of yours. So some of the questions refer directly to the work and others don't.
Okay.
So we're going to begin with Christine.
Hi, Christine.
Thank you. And I love the way Christine begins her questions. She says, I cannot wait for this. So the question I selected from Christine goes like this, and there's actually more than 1 question involved, and that happens with some of these, Jincy. They're kind of multiple parts. Others are not. Others are barely 1 part. So Christine asks, in The Jaws of Life, the opening lines, according to Hannah, real life just happens, whereas stories make sense. When you put real life in print, she says, you show up for the pointless mess. It really is. And this really resonated with me, says Christine. It feels as though you put your life, the messy parts, into written form to make sense in some way. Do you feel as though your writing has been cathartic for you? And do you ever think, and this is a slightly to the side part of the question, and do you ever think that you may have gone too far, like in Justine Laughs at Death?
Nope, I haven't gone too far yet. I wish I would do that. That would be interesting. But no, as far as, no, and I'm not making fun of Christine. I mean, it's a good question. I don't think I'm the kind of person who goes too far. It's interesting that she mentions it with Justine, because to me, that was Justine was the last story that I wrote for that collection, or for any collection, really. And I thought, well, you know, if this is the best I can do, I should probably stop, because I'm just fooling around, you know. I was just horsing around with that. So actually, that's the opposite of going too far. It wasn't coming from I was just being silly. I think. I mean, maybe there was something more going on than that, but that was all I was aware of.
So
but yeah, we do write. We write stories or tell stories in order to make sense out of life. I don't think I've ever found that cathartic, but I do find it worth doing, and that's why I think fiction is such a great medium.
Yeah,
it's because unlike real life, fiction has to make sense, even if the sense that it makes is that it makes no sense. You're still ordering it. You're still interpreting it.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it definitely does, and I don't think it sounds to me like you're not interested in going too far. I don't know. I think
No.
some authors may be, but
Well, it depends on your relationship with your reader, I think. I mean, if they're going too far, are they assaulting their reader in some way, or is it they're I don't know. I don't know what that would, I would have to see an example, I guess, to know what that would be like.
Sure,
I don't know.
sure. Great, thanks, Christine.
Yeah.
We're gonna move ahead to Decacia.
Okay.
Decacia says, thank you for taking the time to answer our questions, Jincy.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, maybe this is similar in terms of going too far. But
Yeah.
in Under the Bed, the
Mhm.
lead character tells her colleague, that's interesting, Regina, you want me to be a martyr, a role I find repellent in the extreme. I was victimized yet, but I am not a victim. Was the purpose of this scene for her to take her power back in her life? She seemed unsatisfied with her life before the attack, and now it seems as if it gave her the confidence to take back her life. The
It's
story,
interesting. I'm wondering why she thinks she was unsatisfied with her life before the attack.
I
I
wondered the
don't,
same thing. I do.
I don't remember that. I
I,
didn't mean to imply that. I thought her life was fine before the attack, but maybe it's there on the page and I didn't know it. You know, you only really know what you put down there and what you meant, but you don't know what somebody else sees when it's on. In other words, I'm not the boss of the story. Every reader is the boss of whatever it is that they're reading. So if she saw that there, then I don't know what to say, except that it's news to me, but it may be actually there. That's what that particular story is what I think of as a thesis story, an exploration. I started off just wondering, would it be possible for a specific woman in this specific situation, she's a professor, she's happily married, blah, 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 to be assaulted in this way and to come away more insulted by the response of colleagues than by the actual assault. And I thought, I think, if she's a particular person, that you build a particular, I think that's actually possible. But the more I got into it, the more I wasn't sure about that. I mean, I think anytime you're telling a first person story, you have to deal with the unreliable narrator thing. And I think she's actually a little bit unreliable. And at the end, her husband, when she says, the real tragedy is what has happened to my husband, not what happened to me. And I'm thinking, that's not exactly true. On the other hand, she has a lot of good points to make. So,
right. Well,
I don't know. It was an exploration. I just was wondering when I wrote the story if it would make sense.
Well, and I don't know if this is my own annotation, the way this is, not Decasia's note, but I kind of feel that the story is sort of quintessential Jincy, and
Yeah.
I want to say that like 3 times fast. It's not, just can't say it. Right.
Yeah.
And for a number of reasons, there's a victim culture, I think, that exists. And there are kind of expectations that we have developed about how a person should feel under these circumstances, after surviving something that violent and so forth. But those expectations are not met here. This is a totally different character. I feel it's like if you think what's going to happen here, you won't. And also, I love the conflict between the 2 women. That huge fight they have.
Yeah.
How often do you see something like that? That sort of interaction between 2 women characters. I find it very unusual, and
probably more unusual today than it would have been when I wrote that, which was quite a while back. Times change, we're all supposed to be sisters.
Yeah, well, I see what you're saying. Right, right.
But the point of view character there is very testy. She's very, I mean, she's kind of obnoxious on a certain level, but I like her. And I think I mean, what offends her so deeply about the assault, which is that she's being treated as a stand-in for a bunch of other people rather than as herself,
Yeah.
is echoed by the treatment that she gets from friends and colleagues. And to me, that does make sense to find the whole thing really enraging.
Mhm.
You know, she's not being treated as an individual with her own set of sins and virtues and, you know, whatever. She's being treated as all alike. And to me, that's awful. Yeah, it makes sense to me.
She's not interested in that at all, and she gets super pissed about it.
Mhm.
Again, highly unexpected, I think. So quintessential Jincy.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I'm glad. Yeah, because if you can see what's coming, what's the point? On the other hand, you can't write deliberately to confound readers. I mean, that's manipulative and silly. So I don't know.
And infuriating, right?
Yeah,
It's
it is.
alienating. I can't stand that myself, you know.
Yeah.
I don't have time
Me
for it,
too.
really.
No,
I'll dismiss my readership if I sense something like that.
you're being fooled with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good.
So, great answer. Acacia did mention that she was wrecked by this story.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that good? You know, my son uses sick. I mean, he was born in 87, so sick is good.
That's right.
You know, what do I know? So I don't know if wrecked was good or bad, but
It has a couple of different kinds.
I'll tell you something. The biggest, to me, the greatest sort of accidental compliment I ever got when I wrote that story, a friend of mine who's a psychiatric nurse showed the story to a friend of hers, and he read it and he said, you know, this woman, this really happened to her. She's not making this up. And my friend said, no, it didn't really happen to her. She is making it up. It's fiction. And he said, no, she couldn't have made that up because look at this. And he's looking at, there's a point of view thing where she talks about how what his skin looked like and the little segments and, you know, all that. And she finally gave up arguing with him. And I came away, when she told me that, I kind of excited. One of the things that means is this guy doesn't read a lot of fiction. But the other thing it means is he did not understand that the imagination makes this sort of thing possible. It makes possible the enduring of, to a certain extent, of experiences you have not actually had. If you can allow yourself to imagine it, it doesn't mean that you are suddenly, you know, a whole bunch of shit, because you don't, but I don't know. Anyway, it was an imaginative exercise. I sat one day and thought about it, what it would be like, what I would see, and so on, and came up with that. Well, no idea if it would happen in real life, but you know.
Well, and it was an imaginative exercise for all of us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the gift, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. That's I'm glad that we talked about that. So that's why I appreciate Acacia's question, because
yeah, me too. I do. Thank you for me. That was very nice.
Yeah. So this is from Michael. We actually call Michael Mikey.
Mikey, that's nice.
No, a lot of affection for Mikey, and he wrote several questions way over and beyond what was asked of him, and it's almost sort of an essay of questions. And Mikey is definitely very devoted to learning how to be a writer, live as a writer lives. And he has, and this is not my interpretation, he's very open about having insecurities about that and just wondering what that will live like, you know. And so he has so many questions, it was kind of hard for me to select one. So I finally did, and he's talking here about marketing. So it has like several parts, and so I'll kind of go.
Okay, give me just 1 second. I'm going to do something with the dog. Take 1 second. I'll be right back.
No problem. I'm not going to pause the recording because I'm afraid I'll miss something.
I'm back.
It's okay. No
All right.
problem. Kamala,
I was afraid. Okay, so what is the
really nutty here, too.
multi-parts?
Multi-parts. I mean, I can't even count them all, so I'll kind of wave when
Okay,
I get to the end.
all right.
And he says, Mikey says, I saw in an interview where you mentioned that in the world of marketing, if you have the title, quote, then you have the whole thing, unquote.
Mhm.
Does that still ring true today? When I think of things this way, it makes me think I would then be writing some sort of rationale based on a claim, sort of like a thesis. Do you prefer to write, which you already just mentioned,
Yeah, right.
do you prefer to write a book first, then title it, or title it first, then write the book? Or does it all just depend? Moreover, I would
Yeah.
like to know how writing starts. Wow, Mike, you're really cramming a lot of questions in here. Do you have an idea in mind and expand on that idea, or do you just write? Maybe I'm making writing too difficult for myself. I have a lot of experience to gain, so I would just like some tips on how to become more successful. So,
Okay, the marketing, okay, I don't know beans about marketing. I do know a working title. I've always had a working title. But as far as what title you actually get, if you get published, that's really up to your publisher. You know my title story for winner of the National Book Award?
yes, I do.
Okay, so that was a case where I wanted it to be called Fame and Honor because for various reasons. And they said, no, that sucks because it's too abstract nouns and nobody's going to buy that. So come up with something else. So I gave them a list of 10 ridiculous titles, starting with winner of the National Book Award. And I figured, I've got to wear them down and then they'll take what I want. And I forgot about it. And like a month goes by and they come back and they say, legal says this is great. It's already got buzz. I said, what the hell are you talking about? And, they went with that stupid title that I gave them, which actually did probably generate a lot of sales. So what do I know? Nothing. I was horrified. I said, you can't use that. People are going to be pissed off. I didn't win the national book. Anyway, titles are the last thing you have to worry about. Bottom line. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
No, and
let it go. Let it ride.
To me, as far as I think you should have a general idea about whether you're writing a story or a novel. You should have a character that interests you and a situation that interests you. And you should have a pretty good idea of where it's going to have to go by the time it ends. I don't believe in outlining. I don't believe in knowing where it's going. Some writers do, so ask them. But to me, if I knew exactly how I was going to get from the beginning to the ending that I think I'm going to get, I wouldn't bother writing it because I would have already known it.
What's the point, right?
Writing's an act of, I hate to use the word journey because that just gets crapped up all over the place, but it's an act of exploration. And if I'm not exploring while I write, it's just boring the hell out of me. It's because it already exists in some abstract way because I already know how editing. So just
exploration is right up our alley. We use that term, and we also use the word adventure a lot.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I like that. I like that sense of adventure. I think that some other students later will be asking questions about craft like that. So you'll need to remind me that you've already said that you don't outline. I think that does come up.
I don't, but plenty of writers do, but I don't. I absolutely don't. Publishers love outlines, but they're in the business of selling, and I'm not.
They kind of think they need them, right?
Yeah.
In a way.
Where are you going with this? Well, what's your genre? What do you write in the tradition of? That kind of thing.
They need something at a glance. Some do.
Yeah. Right.
To some degree.
My favorite is, what do you write in the tradition of? I mean, seriously, I write in the tradition of me. It's not, if I was writing in the tradition of somebody else, why would I bother? That doesn't mean that, in fact, I don't fall under, I'm certain, because I'm not that good. I mean, I'm certain I fall under certain categories, but why would you think that way when you were actually doing the writing? It would be depressing.
Yeah.
Because we all like to think that we're doing something that has not been done before.
Sure. And has that tradition question come up a lot with you? As that?
No, I don't think anybody would do that to me. I'm too old, and I think that question just started being asked maybe sometime between when I was first published, when those short stories first came out, and today. There's been this massive increase in submissions, so that no longer can you just rise from the slush pile.
Right.
You have to get an agent first. And if you're getting an agent, which I got an agent recently, and she's lovely, but I never had an agent before. And agents will apparently ask you, what do you write in the tradition of? And, there's like, in order to get in it, like you're auditioning for an agent. And to me, that's ludicrous. But it's easy for me to say that because I'm already mid-list and I'm already, probably going to get published.
Right.
So I don't mean to be snotty about it. I'm just saying I don't.
Right. Well,
I think I don't know how to market things. I don't have that kind of a mind.
Well, so. An awful lot of new writers are under the misapprehension that they need an agent.
Yeah.
Right out of the chute.
I still think slush pile is the way to go, but the problem is, I think the only slush pile there is like small literary magazines and stuff. You can no longer just send something to St. Martin's or send something to Viking, whatever. There's no way.
Right.
You have to get an agent before you get in the door. But if you can get yourself in McSweeney's or something, and do it.
Yep.
I mean, just keep writing and sending out shit, and and not waiting for it to come back to you.
Right.
Anyway, we weren't talking about that, so I'll shut up.
Well, no, but I like these tangents. I think this.
Yeah. Well, people that are interested in marketing, I mean, to me, the basic thing is keep your stuff out there. Nobody's going to come in and ask you to show. Just keep it out there, and don't just think about where you'll send it next when it comes back to you.
That's a very nice distillation of that advice, Jincy. Don't sweat it. Don't worry about that stuff in advance of caring about the writing.
Well, and look at it this way: the only reason that I actually became a mid-list writer, because those short stories that I wrote, they got nice reviews where they were reviewed, but basically sold maybe 1,000 copies to libraries and then was pulped, and I probably wouldn't have written anything else except Sedaris really found it on the shelf of a library and loved it and talked it up, and Sedaris is amazing. And so
is that really true that he found you in a library?
Yeah, he was in Chicago. He was still living in Chicago at that time. I think he was teaching there, and he used to go to libraries, which I used to do too, checking out the new books, and that's where he found the book. And then he started talking about it, and then he got famous, and he kept talking about it. I mean, the guy's amazing.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? Something about I had sent, and the story that he likes the best is The Best of Betty.
Oh.
And that makes sense because he's a humorist, and that's probably the funniest story in there, I think. I had sent that story out. I mean, I had sent out slush pile stories before I got published, before the book was published, and I'd gotten sort of nice rejections from the New Yorker and various places, but that story never got a sorry. It would come slamming back to me. Nobody paid any attention to it, and that's the story that made my career. So you cannot take rejection seriously. Rejection just means that the reader, yours was the 10th thing that they had to look at, and they were just too tired, and it didn't do it for them. Right. It doesn't mean that it's not a quality piece. It's just that's the way it works, and that's why you have to keep sending it out.
You have to keep sending it out, and there's so many wonderful stories about that. Author stories saying how many times they sent something out,
right, and
it was returned.
I think Updike is the only writer that never got rejected.
Huh.
I read that someplace.
That's amazing.
Well, the rest of us, yeah, right.
That makes me just want to reject him.
I know, doesn't it? Too late now.
Yeah, it's a little too late now.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's move ahead. Ariana asks a simpler question. She brings up and she says, "Hi, Jincy."
Hi, Ariana.
She mentions Amy and Amy Falls Down, as
Mhm.
do many. So again,
Oh, cool.
she's kind of asking a question that a lot of people asked.
Mhm.
Did you write yourself into the character Amy and Amy Falls Down at all? I saw that NYT speculated that she might be your alter ego.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if your thoughts about if your thoughts about
Yeah.
agents and the need for them in the industry was reflected as well in
Absolutely.
Amy's.
Amy is me. The first novel that Amy was in is called The Writing Class, and then Amy Falls Down. And the one that I've just finished is the third Amy book, because I have nothing else to say. I just have Amy. Amy Among the Serial Killers is the working title for that, and maybe it'll come out this year. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, Amy is me. The only difference, well, there are differences in her biography because I never use my family. Yeah, I'm free to use myself. You know, you can plunder yourself, you can do anything, but I'm not free to use other people. I mean, I am a widow like Amy, but my husband wasn't gay. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of different biographical detail differences. She's also a better writer than I am. She was actually nominated for the National Book Award, which will never happen to me. And that was kind of exciting to try to present somebody who's a better writer than you are when you're not that as good a writer. Anyway, that was kind of fun. But yeah, she's me. Her attitudes toward publication, I mean, I was just able to just run my mouth with Amy. That's fun. She's very easy to deal with because she's me. I had a Bassett. I mean, you know, the whole thing is me. She even lives in my house in Escondido, and
That's right.
but I was never stalked by a murderer in a workshop or any of that stuff. And everybody but me is made up. But Amy is me. She's just better than me.
More quintessential Jincy. That's all.
Yeah, right.
And I know that a lot of people are really interested in all that. So thank you very much for that excellent answer. That cures some curiosity for us.
Mhm.
So next is Victoria.
Victoria.
Victoria says,
What a great name.
hi.
Hi, Victoria.
Appreciate you taking the time to answer these curiosities for us. I'm sure you're very busy, so I'll keep my questions and remarks succinct. And I just wanted to mention that Victoria is actually a super fan. So
Oh, cool.
I don't know if
She's a wonderful person, then.
I have to say, just her, she's a very close reader and a very enthusiastic reader, and she gets you.
Oh, good.
In my opinion.
Not everyone does.
Well, you know, well, that's kind of the theme of a lot of this conversation is that
Right.
not everybody does, and that's okay.
And that's absolutely fine.
Right. So I'm trying to remember which one I selected. Well, so it actually, interestingly, it seems like most of these have already come up already. Excuse me.
Okay.
Sorry.
He's
Oh. Woo. One moment, please, everybody.
okay. Okay.
Live TV. That's what happens.
That's right.
That was weird.
It's that dry air.
It's a dry heat, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. I'll do it.
Okay, so I'm going to go with the most specific question here.
Mhm.
I so enjoy when you include dialect and and specific spelling in your
Mhm.
dialogue. I find I hear the voices quite clearly in my head. Do you have any tips for successfully incorporating this into our own writing? Everybody here is very concerned with dialogue, Jincy. So
Dialogue is fun. Dialogue is a lot of fun. I mean, I have an actress friend who's also a writer, and the two of us used to talk about how wonderful it would be to have a class, an acting class for writers, where writers would learn to be but learn if they would actually read aloud their dialogue to each other and pretend they're in a play.
Yeah.
How well does that work? You know, that's what you would have to do. All I can say about dialogue is it should be elliptical. Remember that the better people know each other, the less they have to say. So try to keep exposition out of it. I mean, try to leave stuff out of dialogue. Let people talk to each other the way, if they're friends, it should show in the sort of shorthand of their dialogue, you know, if they know each other well. If they don't, then that should show too. I mean, I realize these are just generalizations, but this last book that I've written has more dialogue in it than I've ever used before. And I found it almost obscenely easy to do, because first place, dialogue fills up a page, you know, which, you know, it's just, you know, sometimes people just say a couple of things and that's a whole line, which is great. So I don't know if that's what she meant, but that's, listen to it. And if possible, if there's a lot of dialogue in a scene, one of the things you could do is act it out with somebody else in the class and see how well that sounds.
Right.
You know, whether that makes sense.
That's a great idea. Reminds me, I'm sorry that I got all choky there.
I'm sorry.
So it's kind of hard to talk now. It reminds me of a thing that I used to do back in the day. I think it was back in the mid 80s, I think, when answering machines were a thing, right? With the tapes, the cassette tapes, and you could actually, you know, put a 90-minute cassette tape into an answering machine. So it just became this little recording device that you could use illegally. You could actually record conversations you were having with other people on the phone using
machine. That's right.
You just hit record.
You've got mail.
I've got, yes, I have that. Never mind.
This is real, kids. This is real. So anyway, it didn't occur to me that A, it was illegal, or B, that there was anything sort of wrong with it, you know, to record like constant conversations I would have on the telephone with my friends and family. And what I realized, and what you're saying about being elliptical, is also that it's circular. You know, we tend to, in conversation, begin one place and then draw ourselves back to that point of origin. And we're also very fragmented. You know, we rarely complete our sentences when we're on the phone.
That's the other thing. You tend to step on each other's lines, and that's fine. I use a lot of dashes in dialogue for that reason, that you know, because you don't really need to finish saying what you were saying because somebody else already gets it. So dialogue's fun.
Dialogue is super fun. So thank you for that and your other questions, Victoria. Next is Diane. And Diane says, greetings, Ms. Jincy from the Frozen Chosen in Central Texas. She's been...
Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you're all right, Diane.
She's had some serious issues with that.
Oh, God, it's awful.
So a simple question that Diane has is, have you ever looked back at previously published work and thought you could have or should have done it differently? In other words, I guess she's speaking to author regret.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Is that a thing?
Offhand, I can't think of anything. In the collection, there's a story, Anticipatory Grief, which I think is the least good story in the thing. And it seems weak workshoppy to me. And I don't know exactly what I mean by workshoppy, but I mean, it's a good workshop story, but it doesn't do it for me. But I don't regret it. I just, you know.
Was it a workshop story?
I think so. I mean, I had a couple of years, I got a master's in, it wasn't an MFA, but basically it was an MFA, Brown in creative writing. And I think I did write, I don't know whether I wrote that. I know I wrote Father of Invention for that workshop. And that one works fine for me, but the anticipatory grief to me seems just a bit precious, but
sorry,
that's all right.
a bit
Precious, just kind of, just a little bit too controlled or something. I don't know. I don't go back and read it. It doesn't
Well, if you go back
interest.
and read anything.
Well, what your students might find, and I'm sure you found this too, it's really interesting to pick up a book you've written that you haven't looked at it in a long time and sort of enjoy it because you've forgotten half of that stuff. I mean, you think you
Sure.
wouldn't forget, but you do.
Yeah.
And you go, hey, that's actually pretty good there.
That's right.
good.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Who knew?
I love that feeling. I love that feeling of like, who wrote this?
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know I could do that.
I didn't know I could do that.
Actually, the biggest thrill what I've had recently is I unearthed an old notebook. I've never kept journals. But I found an old thing that I'd written back in the late 70s, early 80s. Just a lot of little cryptic, things, titles, possible title. They're like messages in a bottle. They're just amazing. I have no idea where. I don't remember writing them. And some of them are just ridiculous. Some of them are kind of interesting. And it's like I'm hearing from a complete stranger. I just love it. It's great.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we do that. And we say that stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's
not like reading an old diary. I kept one of those 5-line diaries when I was in high school. And it's a tragic thing. I lived for grades. That's all I cared about was what I was reading and what grades I was going to get. But I recognize that girl. I remember her. I do not recognize the person writing in that writer's journal. It's just a completely different experience. The difference between working with that part of your brain that's trying to come up with stuff imaginatively and just simply putting down what happened that day. It's not the same part of the brain, I don't think.
right. Hey, I had one of those 5-line diaries, and it was like for 5 years too.
Yeah, that's right. It was a 5-year find line thing. It's just the saddest thing I've ever seen.
Well, and my father had given it to me, had a little lock and key on it, and he said, "This is your private thing," and and so I recorded things like boys I had crushes on, and how many times I'd been kissed, and how many cigarettes I smoked.
Ooh, good for you. See, I never did any of that stuff. I was listening to one of your, I'm sorry, it was supposed to be during your students, so I'll make it quick. One of your videos, and you talked about how some students say they don't have memories. I have very few memories of my childhood and my adolescence because I lived in my head, in my room, in books. And I can remember a few things that happened, but mostly I wasn't in the world when I was very young. And if you're not in the world, if you're completely, we would travel across country and I'd be reading an American tragedy. We'd be going by some amazing thing and I'd be reading, Victor Hugo. You don't come away with a lot of memories. I have a lot of memories of reading, but they're not very helpful when you go to write.
Well, I don't know.
Anyway.
I would think that memories of reading would be pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, they're important. But the point is, I didn't know anything about boys. I didn't know anything about. I was never plugged into society at all. So I was very fortunate in that I never worried about being popular because I didn't really have any connection with these people. They were fine. I liked them, but I didn't want to belong to any group. And that's not because I was a wonderful person. I just lacked the desire to do that.
The social.
So that makes for another, like who cares?
It's very healthy to me,
But it's nothing you can be proud of. It's just the way you're made. It's just, it's a crapshoot, the genetic stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a pop gene. There's a gene that, makes you care about that. And I just didn't get it. So, yay. That was cool.
Jincy. All right, we're moving through. We sure are. Tyson says,
Great name.
Tyson, yeah, it's very cool. What a wonderful opportunity to ask a few questions. Um, he only gets to ask one.
Okay.
But he does bring up Amy Falls Down quite a bit and has a lot of interest in that series. Also asks about crossover with you and Amy. And in one of your interviews, he says, when asked about your book, Amy Falls Down, you talk about how you do not set out to be funny, but that the universe is frequently funny. That's a quote. Do you have any examples in your early life of how you came to that realization? Or are you able to elaborate on why you feel this way about not setting
I
out?
don't think I ever came to a realization. I never set out to be funny. It's true that my favorite writers when I was growing up, and still among my favorite writers, are the American humorists of the 30s and 40s. So that, and some British humorists too. And so that actually informs, but they were also great stylists. No, I just think the experience of life, I don't know how you can keep humor out. There are things that happen, horrible things that can happen, and still there can be something funny in them. And the funny in the horrible thing that happens does not in any way alleviate it. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't help, but it's still there because the universe is slapstick and pies are always whizzing by and sometimes they hit us. And I don't know how else to put it. I wish I could think of an example, and off the bat, I can't think of examples that I would share simply because the one I'm thinking about is just too serious. But it's a funny universe. But you don't always laugh when it's funny.
Right.
Sometimes it's just horrible. But
right.
But you look back and man, that was amazing.
Yeah. Well, the whole funniness question is something that we just have sort of looming, or it's a pie whizzing by us.
Yeah.
Or it's a banana peel that we step on.
Right. It's a banana peel.
And so it's part of the sort of
falling is always. I've been fascinated by falls all my life because when I was a kid, I used to fall all the time. And kids do; they're kind of clumsy. You reach a certain point when you get older when it's not funny anymore. It's you really hurt yourself. Nevertheless, there's something innately hilarious about people falling, and that's the universe for you.
That is so true. It's just awful.
No, you can be horribly injured. I mean, it's not. Stephen Leacock was wonderful. He was a professor of economics and also a humorist. He was Canadian. And he wrote nonsense novels, which are really it's just a small volume that you can pick up and read. It's very funny. But he was asked once about humor, and he said, humor didn't become civilized until fairly recently. He said he thought about that. He was at a pond, an iced over pond, and he was watching this beautiful ice skater. And the skater was doing pirouettes on the ice and going round and round and round, and then all of a sudden fell through. And everybody went, oh, and then he came back up and he was fine. And after that people laughed because it was funny, but they didn't laugh before he came up. And Leacock's point was that there was a time in human history where they would have laughed when he fell through. They would not. That's the difference between civilization. And that's what civilization does. You don't laugh when somebody falls through the ice, but you used to, because that's what's funny. It's not funny that he came out. It's funny that he fell through. And if he never came back out, it would still be funny.
Did he fall through the ice, or did he just fall down on his rump on the
ice? The way he told the story, he actually fell through the ice. It must have been, so he actually went down under the ice and then came back up and was rescued and everything was fine. But the point, it wasn't him. He saw this happen to somebody else. This is assuming it's a true story.
Yeah.
But the point of the story is the occasion for the laughter. We've moved the bars so that we do not laugh when people die. But actually, we used to.
Well, I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of jokes about famous radio personality who died recently, and there's some people take a lot of
Oh, yeah.
in that, and it make a lot of really
Ha ha ha.
jokes about it.
Yep.
I don't know why that example came to mind.
Well, yep.
I just heard some this morning or something like that. It's fresh
Right.
in my mind.
Exactly.
So, Rodolfo
Rodolfo.
says, hello, Jincy. I appreciate you taking the time to grace us with your presence and provide responses to our questions.
Mhm.
And he has several.
Okay.
So I'm just looking for one here that is completely different than anything we've looked at previously.
Mhm.
In your Who the Bleep is Jincy, it mentions that you may laugh inappropriately late at night.
Well, don't you? I mean, who doesn't laugh inappropriately?
Well,
Inappropriate laughter is, yeah.
what do you consider inappropriate, Rodolfo asks, and does that bear any weight in what you decide to write? In other words, is there an aesthetic of inappropriateness that is part of your
I think that just gets
right
back
now?
to what we were just talking about, laughing when someone dies or laughing when someone falls through the ice.
So that's it. You're right.
Uh,
That's what you mean by inappropriate.
Yeah, it's just not being kind. You don't have to be kind when you're all by yourself. So you can actually sort of enjoy the hell out of something, some fate that has befallen someone. And if you were in polite society, you wouldn't do that. That's all. I didn't mean anything. I was just fooling around. It didn't mean anything profound. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and now we move to Beatrice. Beatrice says, hello, Jincy, and she's another student author who has 100 questions.
Okay.
So she's also asking about outlines, and I think we covered that.
Yeah. Yeah, if they work for you, do it. I'm just saying it's not necessary.
So we're gonna go back to Amy here, since this is a subject that interests Beatrice a great deal, and it's relatively specific. What inspired you to have Amy have a dead husband, Max, of whom was gay, so they even went on separate honeymoons and died of AIDS? When I first read about Amy's husband, it was when she was describing her hate or extreme dislike for doctors because of their incapability or inadequacy during Max's dying moments and eventual death. I never expected the relationship between Amy and her husband to be so unconventional, for lack of a better word. What inspired you to have Amy, the main character, have this kind of relationship in the story?
Good question. It was a practical consideration. As I said, I would never use my actual husband. His death is his, and I would never use it. Everything. I mean, I really have a thing about privacy. But as far as I'm concerned, Amy is basically me, so she would have to be a widow, and the death of her husband when she was young would have to inform her personality and life and fate and so on. But I wanted to make absolutely sure that the husband that I built for her was completely different from my actual husband.
Right.
And so that's what I came up with. I thought, well, and it would also make sense because she has sort of, at one point, I say in one of the books, she's sort of been waiting in the wings all of her life. I mean, she and Max, they really love each other. They're soulmates. It's not like it was a bad relationship. But the truth is, if he had just been born 20 years later, he could have had a real marriage. He could have had he wouldn't have had to settle for this Vietnam marriage. He could have married a guy. I mean, he could have had a complete, and she could have actually taken a risk and put herself out there with somebody that she could be truly intimate with in every way. And I think it's sort of like her personality, which is different from mine that way, that she would be drawn to this relationship. And they are very close.
Yeah.
But
They are
they're
so
also necessarily not close in other ways. And I don't mean just sexually. It's just, anyway, that's why I needed her to be, bottom line, I needed her to have loved him and to be his widow, but I also needed to be completely different from my own situation
right.
because of
And
the privacy thing.
yes, okay. I appreciate that response quite a bit. Um, the privacy being the key there, and
Mhm.
also back to the just unexpectedness of it. I mean, unconventional relationships exist all the time. A lot of us consider our relationships to be unique in some way.
Mhm.
So the challenge becomes how to make it exceptionally
Right,
unique. Um,
right.
and so that's something that I consider to be quintessentially Jincy.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
You're going to just get mad at me.
No, it's fine. One wants to be quintessential. One is not so sure, but what the hell? My quintessential, Nancy. Yeah.
What a word
That
I
probably
use
also,
every day.
the quintessential, what you're calling quintessential probably actually filters into the fact that I am not a social creature. I mean, it would tend to make you a little odd. It would tend to make you sort of stick out in a way because you're not doing a bunch of stuff that most people do.
Right.
I would not call myself a nonconformist. In order to be a nonconformist, you have to have something to conform to, and I never figured out what that was. So I'm just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to identify yourself as something like a nonconformist too. It seems like a strange sort of,
Yeah.
I don't know, conceit.
Yeah. Right.
And I know we all have conceits, but that seems to be a little over the top.
Right.
Oh, we're getting there, Jincy.
Okay.
This is a lot, but there's just a couple few more here, and
Yeah.
they're pretty simple. What we have
Okay.
left here is pretty simple. This question is from Zerui, and
Mhm.
Zerui is a diarist,
Mhm.
and is very interested in all things diary oriented.
Mhm.
And Zeruri says, I often keep a diary and I always like to avoid the dark side of my heart. I know that
Mhm.
diaries are very private and not read by outsiders, but I can't get over facing my dark side,
Mhm.
like cigarettes and making out.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'd like to know how you face your dark side when you write at some point. I I know this may be a bit harsh, but it's a question that's been bothering me for a long time. So,
Hmm.
hmm.
I wish I knew what dark side was, and I'm not being. I'm not being.
I'm not sure either.
The only thing I can say is, if by dark side, I know because when I was writing in the 80s, I felt something come on, which actually turned out to be sort of a mini breakdown, an anxiety panic thing. And it was coming for me. And I didn't know that, but I did know that I was very anxious and I was frightened and blah, blah, blah. And I did some of the best stories that I wrote for that were written during that time when I was trying to get a hold of the thing that was coming for me, of the anxiety and the fear and the
Yeah.
whatever. And then it came for me anyway. And then at 5 weeks later, it started to go away and everything was fine. And I remember asking Berlin Castle, who was teacher there, he was on the faculty. I said, has that ever happened to you? I mean, do you ever turn around and try to grab the thing that's trying to get you? And he said, oh yeah. So if that's what she means, and he also said, it's not going to stop it, but yeah, that's where it is. That's where the truth lies sometimes anyway. It's not cathartic. It's not therapeutic, but you have direct access to something important. And so I would say go for it, except that there may be a good reason why you're not going for it. And I don't know you. So I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, if that's what you mean by dark side, I think it's yours to use if you can use it, if you're free to use it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
all a question of whether you're free to use it.
I'm trying to, and I'm puzzling about this too. And I wonder, since we were just talking about being, Zurui is young, which
Mhm.
I was once, and so were you.
Me too. What a long time ago that was. Jeez.
And I I work with a lot of young students, and
Mhm.
I sense that too. I sense that it's an outlet for diaries and journaling, whatever,
Mhm.
or some types of drafting addresses a darkness or depression or a sense of
Mhm.
despair, especially these days, unfortunately. And I hate to
Yeah.
go to that trope and refer to these times as being a time of darkness for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I appreciate that, because I think I definitely agree with you about just not being afraid of the fear,
Mhm.
because it's probably healthy. It's probably
Yeah.
part of a good experience and a good adventure and exploration as a writer.
Right.
Go ahead and
Yeah.
go there.
Yeah, now that I think of it, and the reason that I got into this trouble mentally at that time was that there was something that I really should have faced and didn't. I was going through something that I should have just stopped saying, "Oh, it's not a big deal," and recognized that it was a big deal and sort of faced it. And I didn't. And it got me anyway. I mean, psychologically. And then it was okay.
Yeah.
But that would be an argument for actually trying to deal with it in fiction or trying to deal with it in your diary.
Okay. Right.
Because at least I was trying to deal with it rather than just shrugging it off and, telling myself this crap about how it really didn't bother me.
Mhm.
That's not, I know that that's a bad idea.
Yeah,
I
and
learned from that.
we can chastise ourselves for submitting to that kind of
Mhm.
um, you indulgence, I guess,
Yeah.
which is unnecessary. All
Yeah.
right. So just a few more,
Okay.
Ooh, three more.
Sure.
Again, and they're pretty brief. Um, Corey, bless your heart, Corey, is just pretty much asking the questions that have been addressed earlier. Clearly, they're questions that we all care about, but this is the one special question here. I read in one of your interviews that you don't know how authors can write so much and so often. You feel like
Yeah.
you're different from them in that regard. And okay, Corey, this is weirdly phrased. What makes
Mhm.
it easy for you to step away from writing for a while?
Laziness makes it easier for me. I'm sorry. It's that simple. I don't have, like, I could support myself writing if I wrote a book a year, but I don't. I write a book every 4 or 5 years or 6. Writing is hard. It's not fun. The fun part is having written something, but the actual writing is horrible. And I just, and I don't actually have that many ideas. My family was wonderful, and I had no, I mean, like anybody else, I had problems in childhood, but I had wonderful parents, and I've been physically well. I have no scores to settle, which is awful, because writers who were badly treated, man, they got so much to write about. I don't really have that much to write about. No, so that's it. Um, that's the answer. It's no effort to step away. The effort is to step in and
Yeah.
face the blank page. Blank pages are scary.
And hey, you live
So
in San Diego. What do you have to complain about, Jim?
I know it's ridiculous. It is pretty nice out here.
It is.
Yeah.
I lived in Escondido for a while too, but I didn't like it as much as the coastal towns, I have to admit.
Yeah. Well, the coastal towns are a lot more expensive, but yeah. Yeah.
But Escondido had J.J. Cale while he was still around, and that was
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And in San Diego, I guess Jim Croce was there. His widow has a bar there.
Yes.
It used to be good for musicians, and
Oh, geez.
a lot of great musicians in San Diego, including my son. They're really.
His son plays piano there every night
Mm-hmm.
at Croce's.
Yep.
That's also expensive though. That's in the Gaslight District, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, So I digress.
Yeah,
Um,
good subject though.
it is. So, Idalia.
Italia.
And one more person.
Okay.
Hi, Jincy. Thank you for taking the time to answer my question, singular. In the writing class, did you have a favorite mystery writer who inspired your writing style?
Nope. You know who I like? I like Stephen King a lot. I think he's great. Not everything that he's written is great, but he's, in first place, he gets up and writes 1,000 pages a day, and he's just out of his mind. And he seems like such a nice man. He's been married to the same woman all this time. He's not a jackass. I mean, so, but those aren't actually mysteries for the most part. When I was a kid, of course, I loved Agatha Christie and Niall Marsh and John Dixon Carr and all those people. But no, I don't read mysteries anymore. So, yeah, I was taken to task by some readers of the writing class. Somebody mentioned that in a review somewhere that nobody gets killed until page 200. And I'm thinking, is there a rule? Apparently there is. I had such a hard time killing people off. I mean, I have this setup. You've got a writing class. Something's going on. Somebody's doing nasty things. You know, it's got to be one of those guys. I mean, it's a setup. That's a sort of an Agatha Christie setup. You know, you've got a group of characters in an enclosed space. People are going to start dying, but I found it actually kind of hard to start murdering them because it just seemed like such an extreme thing to do. You know, I mean, gosh, I don't really have the heart for it.
No, and you told me once that you just don't like killing people off in general.
Yeah.
Did you say that? You have kind of a hard time killing off.
Yeah, although the last thing that I've written, it does have serial killers in it, but her attitude toward it is like, this is stupid. It's like, let's talk about our actual lives, not the fact that someone's butchering people. And I just figured should have serial killers in it because we're all serial killers 24/7 these days.
Mm.
That's you know, TV, documentaries, everything. It's like a craze.
I was trying to watch a documentary about a serial killer the other day, and it overwhelmed me. I couldn't do it. I
Was it Ramirez?
Was it Ramirez? It was
I've
the
seen them
Night
all.
Stalker.
They're all pretty terrible. I just oh yeah, that was just depressing. The only good thing about that story is how everybody finally chased him down. I mean, that's great. It should have ended there.
Cool. That part is so cool.
It is cool. But then they show him and the women who were sending him, I don't want to know any of that. I just put him away and put anathema, declare the man anathema. That's it. They're not glamorous. They're not even interesting. They're
well, and just the brutality is terrible.
yeah.
I recently experienced a home invasion.
Really? That's horrible. I'm sorry.
Horrible, and it scared the shit out of me. And I want, it made me think of our character in Under the Bed and how she, dealt, and how I just wasn't doing that.
No, I'm sure I wouldn't either. I'm sure I wouldn't either. In the book that I've written, there's this big climactic scene at the end where Amy has to face somebody like that. And she responds to it in a very Amy way. I kind of doubt that I would not respond in an Amy way.
Yeah.
I'd be screaming and yelling and objecting.
Very vocally. Just peeing my pants. I mean, I was just.
Did you have your dog then?
Oh yeah, it was recent, and I was at a. There was kind of I live in a condo in Scottsdale, and don't get out much, and was sort of propped up with my broken foot. Downstairs, there was an all-day pool party going on, and I was sitting with my neighbors down there, and it just got wilder and wilder as the day and then into the night, and I didn't feel like moving because my foot.
Your foot.
And so, but then I started going, do you guys hear that? Do you hear that? I could actually hear super strange sounds going on. And there's been a lot of roof construction going on here so lately, and so there are all these ladders all over that are just stacked, these very tall metal ladders that are just stacked by the side of the building. And so somebody just grabbed one of those and just, put it next to my balcony and just came in and stole my stuff and broke my stuff and,
Oh,
freaky. But I wasn't there, and neither was Kamala. We were downstairs.
oh, you weren't there. Okay, good.
We weren't literally in the unit when it happened. I had the feeling that this is such a digression. I had the feeling that maybe it was somebody that knew that I wasn't there, that somebody
Yeah.
saw that I was sitting with my neighbor.
Absolutely. I
with
would
my
think
foot
that
up,
too.
something like that.
I'm
So-
sorry, that sounds frightening.
Well, it's just interesting. It's all like so much of this is about processing life,
Uh-huh.
and how we do that, especially as humorists and as
Yeah.
fiction writers and nonfiction writers. So
Mhm.
it's just part of the whole thing, the whole fabric.
One of my favorite, I don't have very many favorite lines of my own, but getting back to that dialogue question, in the writing class, there's a point where she and her class are down at the Moonlight Beach and they're looking for somebody, and then they find a dead body and then they have to call the police. And the police come and they're standing some distance away from the dead person. And they're talking a little bit, and then Amy says, "Would you like to see the body?" And then immediately starts laughing because it's such a ridiculous thing to say. But I think that is what you would say. I mean, you would say, would you like a cup of tea? Would you like to see the
Would like to see the body?
Would you like to see the body? I don't know. To me, that's part of the slapstickiness of the whole
It
thing.
is. It's
How in the world what do you say in order to get somebody? I don't know. Would you like to see the body? Would you like to see what we've done with the rumpus room? Yeah.
So we have one more question. This is from Angela, and Angela is also a big fan of yours. She says, "Hello, Jincy. Thank you so much for doing this for us. This is such a cool opportunity." And she just has one question, but it's a little bit dense. I mean, in a good way, dense. I don't.
Good. Dense is good.
She says, I'm just going to read it the way she has it here. "I was reading a book page article / interview of you and your novel, Amy Falls Down. In this article, you mentioned how you wanted to be a writer, wrote something at the age of 10, and that you thought it was so terrible that you just stopped forever. Then when you were in college, your creative writing professor suggested you submit a story you wrote to magazines. It mentioned that you were like, well, great, now I have to be good at this," which I think you are, she says, Angela says.
Yeah.
"How did you find the courage to go and put your writing out there? I can imagine that can be very nerve-wracking. What are some of your methods to pump yourself up?" And that's
Don't pump myself up. I think probably what was helpful, I do remember when Berlin said, you're going to send this to the New Yorker. And I was just submitting it for an A. It was the first class. I was a philosophy major, and I was just submitted this because a friend of mine said, let's take this creative writing course. And I was just looking for an A because I was working on a 4.0 because, that's what I do. And, but I was like 30 at the time. And that's the thing. I mean, when I got over him saying, you're going to send us out and it's going to get rejected and all this sort of, and I realized that it was now up to me that I could in fact be a writer. And if I wasn't a writer, it was my fault. And once I got over that, which happened pretty quickly, it really wasn't that hard to toughen up and send it out because I was 30. If that had happened when I was 20, I think it would have been hard. But by the time you hit your 30s, you're tougher. Don't you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, you're old enough so that you have an idea of what's important and what's not. And I didn't have any great confidence that I was ever going to get published, but I thought, well, it'd be stupid for me not to try. So I did. And the rest is history. But that's it.
Glad you
But honestly, I don't think I would have had the nerve to do it when I was young.
Huh.
On the other hand, I don't think I would have been a good writer when I was young. I don't think I had that ability until I got 30s are great. Don't you think?
Yeah.
The 30s is when it all starts to come together.
Yes,
At least for me.
absolutely, absolutely. That's a good median point. If you can survive your 30s, not
Yeah.
counts.
Right.
Wow, Jincy, this has just been an absolute pleasure and an honor.
Well, I hope they're not bored out of their skulls they're gonna have to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nope, still recording, by the way. So just
Okay. Well, sorry if it's boring.
no, I think it's a thrill, and I think everybody's going to think that. So,
Oh, cool.
on
I
behalf-
really appreciate. Tell them I appreciate all the questions. They're good questions.
yeah,
They're very good.
it's a good group, and they're very engaged.
Uh-huh.
Which I appreciate, and I've also put them through a lot.
Oh,
Our
good.
library is extensive, and not only do they have a lot to read, but they have a lot to write, and they're
Mhm.
putting their portfolios together now. Sorry, Kate,
Excellent.
sorry to talk about you in the whatever 18th person here,
Mhm.
but so it's a challenging
Mhm.
course for everybody, but I think they
That's
really,
great.
yeah.
Okay. Well, it was my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Okay, I'm going to sign off so that I can
Okay.
start dealing with whatever the next step is here,
Mhm.
and I'll send it to you, and of course
Okay.
I'll post it to the
Okay.
website, everybody.
All
Okay,
right. Thanks a million, Becky. This was fun.
yes, thanks so much, Jincy. Thank you so much.